The greatest war ever fought was never on the battlefield, but within the mind of man. He stands alone beneath a gray sky. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, a man who commanded legions and yet bowed only to reason. In his eyes there is both calm and storm. Around him the empire stirs, soldiers sharpen blades, the senate plots, the people pray. But inside him there is silence, the kind of silence that no noise can touch. This is where mastery begins. Not in the control of others, but in the conquest of self. The Stoics taught that speech is easy. Restraint is divine. To speak less is not to know less. It is to see more. For every word unspoken is a word weighed, measured, and tested in the quiet furnace of thought. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength does not shout. It whispers. It does not demand to be seen. It waits. Patient, calm, eternal. The noise of the world, in every age, the world grows louder. The clamor of gossip, the endless chatter of opinion, the need to be heard above the crowd. These are the wars of the tongue. But silence. Silence disarms them all. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Most words are born not from wisdom but from fear, the fear of being misunderstood, overlooked, forgotten. The Stoic, however, seeks no validation. He speaks only when speech serves virtue. His silence is not emptiness. It is control. Imagine a man who listens more than he speaks, whose eyes see before his mouth moves. Around him, noise loses its meaning. People become unsettled by his calm. They wonder what he knows that they do not. He commands through restraint. When he is silent, he owns the space. The emperor's reflection, a soldier once asked Marcus Aurelius, "How can a man rule millions and still remain calm?" The emperor replied, "By ruling himself first." Silence was his discipline. In every council meeting, he would listen as senators argued, tempers flared, and words filled the air like arrows. And when he finally spoke, only then the room would fall quiet. His words carried the weight of a mountain because they were forged in silence. Speech reveals the self. Silence refines it, the inner battlefield, inside. Every man and woman is a battlefield, between impulse and reason, noise and stillness, chaos and clarity. The Stoic learns to win that war not by force, but by observation. No man is free who is not master of himself. To master oneself is to pause before reaction, to breathe before speaking, to observe before judging. This is not weakness. It is the highest strength. In silence, one can hear the echo of wisdom. In restraint, one can see truth unfold. The power of stillness. Close your eyes. Picture a flame in the dark, steady, unwavering, untouched by the winds that rage around it. That is the Stoic mind. While others are carried away by emotion, he remains rooted. His silence is not absence. It is presence, sharp, deliberate, alive. It speaks of confidence, of inner authority. When he speaks, his words are arrows. When he is silent, his silence is the bow drawn taut with control. To speak less is not to withdraw from life. It is to engage with it more deeply, to listen, to observe, to understand. For the one who speaks little often sees much. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus, The Art of Controlled Restraint, in the Noise of Conflict. Be it war or argument. Those who control their silence control the field. The Stoics understood this not as a trick, but as a truth of nature. When you stop reacting, you start directing. Silence unsettles the unwise. It forces others into movement while you remain still. Like a river, calm on the surface yet carrying immense force beneath, the silent Stoic shapes outcomes through patience, not panic. A Roman general once said of Marcus, "When he pauses, men tremble. When he speaks, they obey." His silence was not weakness. It was signal. It told the world he needed no noise to assert command. When we respond too quickly, we surrender control. But in the pause, in that sacred breath between impulse and action, we regain power. That is the Stoic's moment of mastery, the battlefield of the mind picture, the emperor standing before his legion at dawn. The enemy banners flutter beyond the fog. A messenger rushes in, shouting about rumors, betrayal, and fear. Yet Marcus does not move. He listens. He lets the storm pass through him. Hold the line, not for glory, not for empire, but for reason. his men steady. The chaos breaks, because his calm has become their strength. That is the power of stillness. It is contagious. It spreads from one disciplined mind to all who witness it. Silence is strategy. In our modern world, silence has become misunderstood. People equate it with uncertainty or weakness, but the Stoics saw it as strategy, a way to think clearly before the noise consumes reason. When someone insults you, remain quiet. When others argue without listening, stay still. When chaos erupts, breathe. This silence does not make you invisible. It makes you untouchable. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Each pause becomes a shield, an invisible armor forged from discipline. While others drown in emotion, you stand above it. The wise speak after understanding. The unwise speak to be understood. The Stoic knows the difference, the emperor's lesson. There's an old story told by his guards. One night, after a long council meeting, Marcus left the tent in silence. A young commander followed him, desperate for approval. "Caesar," he asked, "why do you speak so little when men seek your counsel?" Marcus looked toward the horizon, where the first stars glimmered like thoughts waiting to be born. He said softly, "Because when a man speaks too soon, he speaks from his wound. When he waits, he speaks from his wisdom." The young soldier never forgot those words, and in time neither did Rome. Modern reflection, even today, the principle holds. In a world of constant talking, social media, debates, endless notifications, silence is rebellion. It is clarity reborn. When you choose not to react instantly, you are practicing stoicism in its purest form. You are saying, "I am the master of my inner empire." True power lies not in domination, but in restraint. Not in how loud you speak, but in how well you listen. Let your silence become your strategy. Let your calm be your command. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, The Weight of the Crown to the World. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, ruler of nations, master of armies. But in truth, he was a man constantly at war, not with enemies, but with himself. Every day, decisions clawed at him, justice or politics, mercy or order, reason or emotion. He carried the burden of millions on his shoulders, yet he never let it crush his spirit. How? Through silence. His silence was not retreat, it was refuge. A fortress of calm built not from walls of stone, but from walls of thought. When the voices around him clashed, when generals disagreed, when the Senate shouted, Marcus turned inward, into the quiet kingdom of his own mind. There he found strength that no empire could give and no enemy could take. The Stoic sanctuary silence, to the Stoics, was not emptiness, it was fullness. Within it lay clarity, resilience, and power. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The mind, when untrained, becomes its own tormentor, spinning fears, regrets and doubts like an endless storm. Silence is the discipline that clears the sky. When we sit in silence, we learn to observe the mind's wild movement, its anger, its desires, its impatience. And slowly, with practice, those waves begin to calm. What remains is something unshakable, a quiet force that nothing external can disturb. This is the Stoic's secret. The strongest walls are built within. The inner warrior in the battlefield of life. Not every fight is fought with swords. Some are fought in the heart, unseen, unheard, yet more exhausting than any war. Marcus faced betrayal, loss, and plague. Yet his writings show no bitterness, only reflection. Why? Because he knew that suffering cannot be avoided, only understood. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. This is the heart of inner strength. Perception. The ability to see clearly when the world is clouded by emotion. Silence grants us this clarity. When you speak less, you feel more. Not emotionally, but consciously. You begin to sense which battles matter, which words heal, and which impulses destroy. The strength of stillness, silence is not weakness. It is training. It is the gymnasium of the mind. Just as a warrior sharpens his sword, the Stoic sharpens his soul through solitude. In silence, we confront the self we often run from. We see our flaws, our fears, our dependencies. It is painful, but it is also liberating. No man is free who is not master of himself. The one who sits calmly in his own company is already stronger than those who need constant noise to feel alive. For he has made peace with the one person he can never escape, himself. To master silence is to master solitude. And to master solitude is to discover that you were never alone. For within you resides all the strength you need. The Emperor's reflection on a quiet night in Germa. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius, the burden of glory, to be praised by millions and yet crave the peace of anonymity. This was the paradox of Marcus Aurelius. He ruled the known world, yet sought no worship, no grand monuments in his name. Where others saw power, he saw responsibility. Where others saw privilege, he saw weight. It would have been easy to become proud, to believe himself divine, as emperors before him had done. But he resisted. He saw pride for what it was, a subtle poison of the soul, sweet at first, deadly at last. It is not titles that honor men, he wrote, but men that honor titles. For the Stoic, pride is the first enemy of wisdom. The moment one begins to think himself above others, he loses sight of truth. The proud man speaks to be admired. The wise man speaks to be understood. The silent power of humility. Humility is not weakness. It is restraint guided by strength. It is the ability to stand tall without stepping on others. It is the quiet confidence of a man who knows his worth but does not need to prove it. In the crowded Senate halls, Marcus often let others speak first. He listened, observed, and when he did speak, his words carried the weight of thought, not ego. He who exalts himself will find that pride comes before the fall, not because of the gods, but because of reason. The Stoic understands that arrogance is noise, and noise blocks wisdom. Humility, on the other hand, opens the path to learning. To speak less is not only to control the tongue, it is to quiet the pride that drives it. The humble man does not seek to win every argument, he seeks to understand. The Emperor and the Slave. It is said that one morning, a slave accidentally dropped a scroll of Marcus's private writings into the fountain. The others expected fury, punishment. But Marcus merely smiled, lifted the dripping parchment and said, "The words still remain. Paper may drown. Thought does not." The soldiers nearby exchanged silent glances, for they knew that no other emperor would have responded so gently. In that moment, humility became might. It was a silent lesson. Power does not need to display itself. True strength shines most when it chooses not to strike. This, too, is the Stoic way, to master emotion, not suppress it. To rise above insult, not retaliate. To respond with calm dignity when the world demands noise. The mirror of mortality. Soon you will have forgotten all. Soon all will have forgotten you. Those words were not sorrowful. They were freeing. He reminded himself that fame, pride, and glory are temporary illusions. The applause of today is silence tomorrow. Why, then, should a wise man boast of his status? Why raise his voice to be heard above others, when all voices fade with time? The Stoic finds peace in the truth that nothing external defines him. Not praise, not blame, not power. His worth is not measured by his crown, but by his conduct, and so he walked among slaves and senators alike, greeting both with the same quiet grace. The strength of dignity is not loud. It does not demand attention. It stands quietly, unshaken, unashamed. When chaos erupted in Rome, revolts, betrayals, and war, Marcus faced them without arrogance or despair. His silence spoke louder than any decree. The people looked to him not because he shouted, but because he stood firm when others crumbled. To be dignified is to know who you are and who you are not. It is to walk with humility, knowing that your voice carries further when it comes from stillness. What we do now echoes in eternity, he reminded his generals. So let the echo be calm. The lesson for the modern soul today: pride wears many masks: status, vanity, comparison. We measure our worth through likes, applause, and validation. But in the noise of self-promotion, The humble remain unseen, and yet unbroken. 2. Walk quietly through a loud world is to carry the spirit of the Stoics. Speak less. Listen more. Act with dignity. True greatness is not in being seen. It is in being steady when unseen. And as Marcus taught, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius, the Sacred. Art of listening in a world that glorifies speaking. The art of listening has become rare, and yet it is the mark of the truly wise. The Stoics understood that one cannot learn while talking, nor grow while defending every thought. To listen deeply is not to wait for your turn to speak. It is to surrender the ego and let understanding enter. It is the purest form of humility. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. When a man listens with patience, he gains what the loud lose: perspective. In silence, meaning reveals itself. The Stoic listens not to argue, but to comprehend. Not to control, but to connect. In every conversation, he hears more than words. He hears the soul behind them. The Emperor's lesson in stillness. Evening, after a long debate in the Senate, a young orator approached Marcus, his voice proud and fiery. "Caesar," he said, "you spoke so little today. Were you not angered by their defiance?" Marcus smiled faintly and replied, "When a man listens, he learns what pride cannot teach." The young orator fell silent, for he realized that while he had tried to win the debate, the emperor had won something greater: understanding. This was Marcus's silent genius. He never sought to dominate through words, but through awareness. In every pause, he absorbed the room, its energy, its fears, its motives. His silence was not emptiness. It was strategy, study, strength. Listening to the soul. The Stoics believed that true listening begins not with others, but with oneself. In moments of solitude, they turned inward, into the quiet chambers of their own minds. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. But learning requires listening, not to the world's noise, but to the still, steady rhythm of one's thoughts. Where did I act with virtue? Where did I fail? What did I learn from silence today? This nightly reflection was his way of listening to his own soul, a dialogue not of words but of awareness. It was in these quiet moments that wisdom grew, steady as the dawn. Reflection. The mirror of wisdom, the unexamined life, the Stoics said, drifts like a ship without a helm. Reflection gives direction. It turns experience into knowledge and silence into enlightenment. In reflection, we find the courage to face our flaws without fear, our emotions without denial. We see our desires not as masters but as teachers. We begin to understand the nature of our pain, and through understanding, we rise above it. When you reflect, you listen to life itself speaking through you. Every hardship becomes a lesson, every silence, a page in your inner book of wisdom. This is why the Stoic journals, not to impress, but to improve. Not to remember events, but to remember truth. Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look there. Marcus Aurelius. The sound of wisdom. There comes a moment when the seeker becomes still, when words no longer hold the answers, and silence becomes the teacher. The Stoic silence is not absence but presence. It is not passive but alive. It listens to the world, to others, to fate, and then responds with grace. In every quiet pause lies a choice, to react or to reflect, to speak or to understand. Wisdom always chooses the latter. Be silent for the most part, or speak only what is necessary and in few words. Epictetus, to live this way is to live deliberately, to let each word, each action, and each silence become a reflection of your inner peace. The final reflection. The candle burns lower. The emperor closes his journal. He has written nothing for glory, only reminders to his future self. Remember, it is within your power to live with dignity, peace, and grace. He extinguishes the flame. The screen fades to black, leaving only the sound of wind and the echo of his words.